that didn't stop. I first heard the knocking 2 days after we moved in. It started just after 3 a.m., a dull rhythm behind the wall in our hallway. Not on the wall, behind it. I stood there in the dark, one hand on the cool plaster, barely breathing, while something inside knocked again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Like Morse code, or worse, like something trying to speak with rhythm, the way you'd try to talk if your mouth had been sewn shut. I didn't wake my wife. Didn't tell her the next morning either. It had stopped before sunrise, and I chalked it up to a new house's weird sounds. Pipes, temperature shifts, rats, maybe. But the next night, it came back louder. We'd gotten the place for a steal. That should have been a red flag, but when your family's been scraping by for years, and someone offers you a 4-bedroom house for the price of a 1-bedroom apartment, you don't ask questions. It had charm. Old wood floors, tall ceilings, and narrow hallways that twisted at strangles. My wife loved the vintage crown molding. My daughter loved the attic. I tried to love the basement. But there were spots in the house that felt thin. Like if you pressed your palm too hard against the wrong wall, you'd push straight through. I never said that out loud until the knocking started happening during the day. Part 3, the shape in the drywall. On the 5th day, I found an impression behind the hallway wallpaper. It was a bump at first, but as I stared at it, I realized it had knuckles, a fist pressing through the wall, frozen in mid-knock. I ran my hand over it. Solid. Cold. Too cold. When I showed my wife, it was gone. Nothing but flat wallpaper. She gave me a look. One that said, "You haven't been sleeping. You're stressed. You've been through a lot." And she wasn't wrong, except I started seeing other things too. Gaps in the molding that hadn't been there before. Doors slightly ajar when I knew I'd closed them, and the sound, the knocking had changed. Now it followed me. It was around 2 a.m. when I noticed the linen closet was deeper than before. I swear to God, it was just supposed to be a little square for towels. But when I opened it that night, it kept going. There was a tunnel behind it, framed in wood, unlit. Too wide to exist in the space between our bathroom and the bedroom, and down the tunnel, far in the dark, something moved. I blinked, and the closet was normal again. I should have left the house that night, should have grabbed my wife and daughter and driven away and never looked back. But instead, I did what everyone does in horror stories. I told myself I was just tired. Part 5, something is recording us. 2 weeks in, I found the recorder in the basement. It was old, cassette-based, plugged into the wall where no outlet should have existed, and it was running, rewinding, playing, stopping, clicking again. I pulled the tape out and held it up to the light. It had writing on it, scratched into the plastic, over and over in frantic strokes. Don't speak while it's listening. Part 6, things behind the walls have names. The knocking got smarter. It began tapping in patterns, faster when we walked by, slower when we were quiet, and I started to recognize it like it was responding to us, or worse, guiding us. Then one night, while sitting on the hallway floor, I whispered, "What do you want?" The knocking stopped. Then came one reply, "Knock, knock, knock, knock." 4. Then again, and again. I looked it up the next morning. Morse code for one word, echo. Part 7, the architect who never existed. Desperate for answers, I pulled the deed and construction plans from the town records. The house had been built in 1911. But something was wrong. No architect was listed, no original owner. The blueprints had entire rooms that didn't exist in the house. And worse, some rooms in the house weren't on any map. Like the strange upstairs hallway we'd never noticed, or the door we thought led to a closet, but now opened to nothing but a brick wall. Someone had built this place to change, and someone had moved in before us, but they didn't move out. They just disappeared. Part 8, she's not sleeping alone. My daughter started talking in her sleep, whispers at first, then full conversations. We'd hear her through the baby monitor saying things like, "No, I don't want to open it again. You said it would be quick. I didn't touch the latch this time." We asked her about it the next day. She said, "I was just talking to the man in the wall. He wants out." Part 9, they're trying to undo. The walls are closing in, not metaphorically, physically. Rooms are smaller than they were. Measurements change from morning to night. I wake up with drywall dust on my clothes. My wife found handprints under the paint in our room, child-sized ones going up the walls and onto the ceiling. Whatever's in this house doesn't want to scare us, it wants to replace us. Part 10. Final transmission. I'm writing this from the floor of the basement. I've blocked the door. The knocking is constant now, not just behind the walls, in my head. I've started repeating things I never said, losing hours, watching my reflection say words my mouth doesn't. I don't know how long I have left, but I know what the house wants. It wants to be remembered. It wants to be copied. It wants you to knock back. Audio distortions intensify. The sound of knocking begins. Have you heard it yet? Because it's been listening to you the whole time. Rooms. I should have. I came close, packed bags, checked hotel prices, even sat in the driveway one night with the engine running and my daughter sleeping in the back seat. But something about the house held on. Not physically, not with chains or locks or some ghostly scream in the night. No, it held on softly, by getting into our routines, by copying them, by echoing them, like how the coffee would start brewing by itself in the morning, even though I hadn't set the machine, or how I'd walk into the living room and find the TV showing static, except the static had a voice buried in it, and that voice was whispering exactly what I had said the day before, verbatim. Verbatim. Same tone, same hesitations, like the house was practicing me. The room with no sound. There's a door upstairs that doesn't make noise anymore. Not the knob, not the hinges, nothing. It's like sound just avoids that room now, and that's not a metaphor. I brought a white noise machine inside once to drown out the whispers. It turned off on its own. I turned it back on. It turned off again. Then it played a sound I didn't recognize. It was me. Sobbing, except I hadn't cried, not yet. That happened later. My daughter's drawings changed. She used to draw cartoons, princesses and dinosaurs, clouds with little stick figure smiles. Now she draws doors, dozens of them, all with eyes in the knobs. Some are locked, some are open, just a crack. One is drawn over and over, a long red hallway, too thin for a person, and the word echo scrawled across the floor. We asked her about them. She said, "That's where he walks, the tall one, the one who knocks. He can't come out unless you open all the echoes." I asked her what an echo was. She looked at me and whispered, "It's when the house remembers you so well. It stops needing you." 3 nights ago, I noticed a change. The back staircase, the one that leads to the basement, is longer now. It used to be 12 steps, now it's 17. And if you stop halfway down, you can hear someone breathing beneath the steps. Slow, ragged, like an old man asleep, or pretending to be. I tested it. Dropped a marble down there, it never hit the bottom, just vanished into the dark. A full 10 seconds of silence, then it rolled back up the stairs by itself. I haven't opened the basement since. There are more of us than there should be. My wife came to me last night, pale and shaking. She couldn't sleep. "There's someone in the bed," she whispered. "You mean our daughter?" "No," she said, "in our bed." I followed her, heart pounding. The bed was empty, but the sheets were indented, as if someone had just stood up. Then we both heard it, footsteps downstairs. My wife gripped my arm and whispered, "But we're all up here." The echoes are spreading. We left the house for a few hours today. Went to the park, got lunch, anything to be normal, but the sounds followed us. Not the knocking, not directly, more like reflections of it, echoes of the echo. Our daughter ran ahead and called back to us from behind a tree, "Come find me." But when we got to the tree, she wasn't there. Instead, the exact same voice came from behind another one, then another, then from inside a storm drain. We didn't find her for 10 minutes. When we did, she was crouched under a bench, smiling. "I made new rooms," she said. "Now the house fits in other places." A letter from someone who was never here. Tonight, I found an envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, no address, just my name. Inside was a letter typed on a yellowed typewriter. It said, "You're almost out of tape. The house can only record so much before it needs to erase. And it doesn't erase the walls. It erases you." There was no signature, but the return address, it was ours, and it was written in my daughter's handwriting. The hallway changes when you're not looking. I've started recording everything on paper, by hand. Because my phone doesn't record the house right anymore. Photos glitch, videos loop wrong, voice memos play backward. Worse, sometimes they show me doing things I haven't done yet or won't remember, like unlocking that soundless door upstairs, like whispering to something through the wall. There's a hallway near the attic now that didn't used to be there. It curves in on itself, like a snake swallowing its own tail. And somewhere at the end of it, behind a door with no handle, someone is knocking, but not with fists, with teeth. I think it's learning to leave. I hear knocking in the attic now. But it's not just inside the house anymore. It's in the trees. It's in the walls of the car. It's in the pipes of the gas station down the street. And when I pressed my ear to the radiator last night, I heard a voice whisper, "You're just the first." The house is bigger now. It has more doors. It has you. Would you like part 3, the knock inside the mirror? I didn't wake up. I shifted between seconds, between thoughts, between copies of myself the house had made and tucked away in corners of time. At first, it felt like sleepwalking. Now I know better. I'm not walking through the house anymore. I'm walking through its memory of me, and the house remembers me wrong. Every room is breathing. The walls pulse now, literally. Stand still long enough and you'll feel the exhale, a warm, rancid breath through the floorboards. It's learning to imitate. When I wake up, the house has already done things for me. Coffee brewed, toothbrush wet, my boots already by the door, laced, except I didn't lace them. And the coffee, it's bitter and tastes like burnt plastic, because I don't drink coffee anymore. I quit a year ago. But the house doesn't know that. It only remembers what I used to do, and now it's building a version of me based on that, and that version is taking over. I saw myself at the foot of the bed. At exactly 3:33 a.m., I sat up, not because of a sound, but because of the absence of one. My ears were ringing in that thick underwater way. I looked down, and someone was standing at the foot of the bed. It was me, but not now me. It was a version of me from years ago, flannel shirt, unshaven, eyes glassy like old VHS tape. He was mouthing something. I leaned forward, and in perfect silence, I read his lips. We knock because we want out, but someone has to stay behind. It always remembers one of us. Then he vanished, and the mirror behind him cracked. Shh, my daughter said goodbye to the wrong me. She hugged me this morning, real tight. She whispered, "I'll miss you." I asked what she meant. She looked up, confused. "You're not the one who comes back." Then she pointed to the window. Out on the lawn, standing by the tree, was another me, watching us, still, head tilted, smiling with teeth that didn't line up right. When I ran outside to confront him, it was just shoes, my shoes, standing upright in the grass, empty, except for the sound, a muffled knock coming from inside them. The house stopped pretending. The rules are gone now. Rooms change behind me. I'll walk through the front door and come out of the fridge. I'll blink and the carpet's gone, replaced by static film. Walls grow eyes, doorknobs breathe. Every mirror shows something different, not reflections. Recordings, versions of me I don't remember, screaming, running, reaching, and behind each of them, that same door. Tall, black, no handle, and something knocking on the other side, slow, hollow, hungry. I opened the soundless door. I wasn't supposed to, but it was open already. Inside was nothing, but not just empty space, it was anti-space. Like a void made from the memory of silence, and in the center of it stood me. The final echo, the version the house chose to keep. He spoke in a voice like reversed breathing. "You looked away too late. You stopped rewinding. Now the tape finishes itself." I tried to run, but the door was gone. And in its place was a hallway with only one wall, and it was made of screens. Each screen showed a door, each door opened, and inside each one was me, screaming. The house isn't a house anymore. It's everywhere. Every reflection, every silence, every forgotten room in every hotel or school or office building. Anywhere you've ever stopped and thought, was that door always there? Anywhere you've heard knocking and couldn't find the source. It's spreading. Because I got out. But the me who got out isn't me. The final tape. I found it this morning, wrapped in my bedsheets. Still warm. It was labeled in handwriting I don't recognize. Do not play unless you want to forget which one you are. I didn't play it, I remembered it. Because the house doesn't record with cameras. It records with people, with lives, with memories. And now I don't know if I'm the original or just another copy, another knock waiting to be heard. If you're reading this, ask yourself, have you heard knocking recently? Do your mirrors ever glitch? Have you forgotten something you know you knew? If so, it's too late. The house has your echo now and it's coming home.